To understand why dating in any Asian country or Mexico or anywhere else that's different than the West is so popular, you have to understand what life is like. Because some people don't date and they don't know why men would go to Thailand to date and find a girlfriend or wife. And in the West, dating is so hard. It's not fun anymore. When I was growing up, I was a nice looking guy and I dated all the time and it was fun. You'd go out with girls and sometimes you would find a girl that just became a friend. Sometimes you'd find a girl that became your girlfriend. But you had fun at each step of the way. Even if it was just a friend, you would go out and you would not worry about the politics of things. You wouldn't worry about who voted for who. The last time I dated in America was 2 years ago. And the girl I went out with, lady, excuse me, she was close to my age. She was a little younger, but by like maybe 8 years. But she spent the first hour of our date talking, telling me what a feminist she was. And that she was so into the feminist movement and she really believed in all of the things that were going on in the government at that time because we had our president was very into the feminist movement, and which I listened to, for an hour about all how she was a feminist, and not exactly the best conversation for a date, but the lady was nice. Other than that, she was a larger lady, and it was okay. Then after that first hour went by, and she convinced me what a feminist she was, then she started on dating. And for the first date, she had commented about my photograph that I have where I have a big cigar, and I enjoy cigars. And she made a comment that she'd never tried a cigar before. So I said, I'll tell you what, there's a little park right, in my neighborhood, and it's okay to have alcohol there, not drinking excessively, but having a glass of champagne or something. So I said, I'll get a bottle of champagne and I'll get 2 cigars, and that'll be our first date. And I didn't get cheap cigars. I didn't get cheap champagne. It wasn't a cheap date. It just sounded like a fun date. It was different than having coffee, which everyone does in the West. So we went, when we were there, after the hour of telling me what a feminist she was, then she started, well, now if we go out again, we're going to go to somewhere nice, right? A nice restaurant, because I like being wined and dined. And, she said it once. I didn't, I kind of thought it was humorous being a feminist, but she wanted to be wined and dined. And then she kept on. It's like, well, if we go out a second time, will you take me to a nice restaurant? And I said, first of all, let's enjoy the rest of this date before we start making plans for the second date. And secondly, kind of, we'll figure it out depending on where we go. A lot of times you just go. If you're going to go to the beach, you go to one of the restaurants on the beach. It's like, whatever. It's not the most elegant restaurant in town, but it's a good restaurant. And it's like, she made such a big deal about it. Finally, I looked at her, I said, doesn't that kind of not go together? I said, it's kind of like a person saying what a vegetarian they are and just, I believe in vegetarian, all this and eating vegetables, and I'm a strict vegetarian. And then later saying, but I do like steak. And, I love lamb. And, ooh, chicken's so good. It's like, okay, by definition, if you like steak and you like lamb and you like chicken, you're not a vegetarian. And the same thing, you can't cherry pick what, if you're a feminist, that's fine. You can be anything you want to be, don't care. But from kind of a, I don't want to say integrity, but from a, just a basic understanding, you can't be both. You can't cherry pick and say, well, if a man did that, I can only imagine what the response would be. Well, I want a woman who's going to work and, believe in equality, and she needs to, pay half the bills and do her part. But then again, I expect dinner to be done when I get home. And, she can bring my shoes or my slippers to the door. And, it's crazy. You don't get to do both. If you profess to be something, then have some integrity and stick with it. If you don't, you can be anything you want to. You can cherry pick, I guess. But I mean, I just looked at her and I said, "How can you be a feminist but love chivalry? You want the man to buy you expensive dinners and bring you flowers and open your door, and all these things that are just as important as feminism to you." But it's like they're at opposite ends. You want equality, but you don't want to be equal with a man, and that doesn't make sense. And so, there are things like that. And one of the problems, too, in the West, especially America, I can't say in other countries, but I think it's the same. There's such a inconsistency in the amount of people on dating sites or on online dating. Men outnumber women so much that it's given a huge, um, I don't know what advantage. Women are dating way outside and above where they should be because there's so many more men, and it's caused so many problems in the dating circle to where, I mean, if a guy looks like Brad Pitt and he's dating a woman that kind of looks like a granny or is very plain, he's not looking for Mrs. Right. He's kind of looking for Mrs. Right now. And then the women get upset because they're not treated the way they should be, they think. And it didn't lead to a relationship. And, oh, he just used me. But it's like, you gotta, I mean, if J Lo asked me on a date, I would be kind of thinking, okay, what's up? I don't think I'm in J Lo's category, and I would either decline or go into it very suspiciously. It's like, well, you have a grandpa complex or something. Because of the difference in numbers on dating sites and online, women have gotten a little bit unrealistic in what they're thinking their dating class is. It used to be like in the days before online dating, when I would go out when I was younger, before I was married, I would meet girls at the mall, I'd meet girls, restaurants, whatever, and you would you were paired up pretty evenly. It's like very seldom did a guy who was homely end up with a beautiful woman or vice versa. Um, Unless, it was like a friend that turned into a relationship or something. But very seldom did you meet someone in public and they were either way more attractive than you or not as nearly as attractive as you. It was kind of lined up. Whereas on online dating, things have gotten ridiculous to where, there are women who seriously are not attractive at all. And some even look like grandmothers. But yet they have a list of all of the things that you need to be and do to date them. And it's like, you're kidding, right? And so it's just such a ridiculous situation in the West. That's one of the reasons why people have started looking in other countries for dateable women, because Thailand is, I love Thailand. It's a great place to have fun. It's a great place to meet women. Women are very sweet. They don't have the a lot of Western women are very opinionated. They're very stubborn. They're very hard to deal with or live with. Whereas Thai women tend to be a lot more easy to get along with. They don't have all these things that are so important. With them, it's family, and their their living or the way they live. But it's not the ridiculous thing like some. I was watching a thing the other day to where on there are all kinds of girls that when they get engaged, the guy not only now has to buy a wedding engagement ring, but now they want an engagement party. And there's a lot of girls that have like a minimum size diamond that they'll accept for an engagement. It led me to, I told my sons, I have two boys, one's 36 and one's 35. And they're not married yet. They've dated and they got their schooling out of the way first and everything. And so now they're actively looking for a woman who's going to turn to their wife. And I've always told them, it's like, when you do me a favor, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what kind of diamond to buy your wife to be. I said, but do me a favor. When you go buy whatever you want for her as her engagement ring and wedding ring, then I want you to ask the jeweler that you go to for the smallest little band that he has, even if it's like gold wire, whatever. I'll give you a cigar band, whatever. But you get the smallest little band and you put that in the box. And when you get down on one knee and you ask her to marry you, if she looks at that and says, yes, I'll marry you, and is excited, then reach in your back pocket and get the diamond and put it on her hand. If she looks at it and goes, ooh, how come there's no diamond? Or it makes any kind of comment like that, you're marrying the wrong woman, because how are you ever going to keep up with that? What, you get her a silver Mercedes for Christmas and, oh, I wanted gold. I mean, come on. So that's one of the things there's a lot of in the West, because people have such high expectations because of what they see on TV. They live in a mobile home park and they're thinking that they're going to live the life of the Kardashians or something. And it's crazy. So, it is a lot easier to date in Thailand. The women, like I said, are very sweet. They're very loving. If they care about you, then they're not worried what is customary in the rule book of the feminine woman or the feminist woman. They will do things for you that an American woman or Western woman would never think of. And it's not that they look at it as their duty or that they're subservient in some way. It's they seriously want to make you happy. And that's, when somebody focuses on making you happy, you want to make them happy. And it's a reciprocal thing. And that's the way marriages used to be, to where each person kind of looked at making the other person happy. And that's why there were so many long marriages. Now it's like everyone looks at it, what am I getting out of it? Am I getting as much as she's getting, or is she getting as much as I'm getting? And everyone's worried about what they're getting out of it rather than what they can do for the person that they supposedly love. So that's one of the things, okay? Another thing is who you're dating. When it's the West, you have, especially, young men, there are very beautiful women in America and in England and Australia and all the Western countries. Very, very beautiful women that are very in shape. They're very pretty, very desirable. But when you start getting older and out of the 20 to 35 range, and you start getting 40s, 50s, the women tend to have some issues when it comes to appearance and what they do with that appearance. I'm not as slim as I used to be. I'm not as good looking as I used to be. But I comb my hair. I take care of myself. I dress nicely. I smell good. I take care of myself to be as presentable as I can. And that's one of the things in the West. There are so many women that they get to a certain age and it's no longer about looking good. It's no longer about beauty. It's all about comfort, and they go to shows and performances and things, and they wear like muumuus and Birkenstocks and don't do anything with their hair, no makeup. And it's disappointing, because as a man, you have to be attracted to, for everything to work properly, you have to be attracted to the woman that you're with. And it's hard when somebody is significantly overweight and they don't take care of themselves and they do nothing to look better, even on special occasions. I don't expect somebody to wear makeup around the house and high heels, but when you go out for the evening, you should dress accordingly. You should look nice, to where whatever your situation is, whether you're a larger woman, older woman, whatever. I've seen women into their 60s and 70s that they take care of themselves. Even though they might be a bigger woman or an older woman, they still look very beautiful for their age, because it matters. They still do their hair, they still put makeup on, they still wear clothing that's appropriate for their body size, and they look attractive. And so it's not like most men are expecting ridiculous things. Now, there are those men that do that, I'm sure. to where they expect a woman to have a flat stomach at 45 years old, but they haven't seen their feet in 20 years. You know, it's like, that's ridiculous. But you have to understand that that is why so many people come to Thailand, the Philippines, and Southeast Asia to look for women. Then you have the other things that are also important. Asian women are beautiful. You know, they have long black hair, very beautiful facial structure. Usually they are thinner because of their diet. And they just, the cutest feet you've ever seen. They're small feet with little toes. And they're very beautiful women. And on top, you know, that on top of the fact that they are so sweet and so loving, it really makes it a great place to date. Some of the other things that happen too is that, you know, it's there's not a lot of the issues with when you date in Thailand. A lot of the women are very understanding, and you know, the first steps where in America, when you meet someone, there's all these things that you have to go through, and they kind of go through this clearing process before they say yes to a date. And it makes it so hard because, you know, you meet someone and you're excited. It's like, hey, they seem nice. I talk to them. You know, they seem like a nice person. They're attractive. I think I might like them. And then, you know, well, I can't do it because I'm doing this and this and this. And you can just tell they're putting it off. A lot of people in the West are scared of dating. You talk to men and women both, and they just say dating is terrible in the West. And a lot of people, you know, I have one of the online accounts that I've kept for years. I've just left it because it's tied to Facebook. And there's so many women that send me, you know, matches or whatever, and I'll send back a comment, and they just don't ever say anything. And they're the one that initiated it, so it had to be that they were impressed to some degree, but it just dies because people are so afraid of dating and so afraid of, you know, oh, he's going to break my heart, and oh, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And it used to be people just went out to have fun. And if you fall in love and get married and live happily ever after, that's fine. If not, you had fun along the way. And that whole thing has just kind of died. So when you go to Thailand, okay, some of the things that are a little different in Thailand than in the West. Actually, almost everything is different, but everything works generally the same. Some people will try to meet people just in there organically as they're going around, and it's very easy to do in Thailand. I always talk about love on the bot bus because in public transit like the bot bus, excellent opportunity, because so many people say, oh, go to the grocery store. There are a lot of single people there. Go to the market, go to the mall. And all of those places you can meet single women in whatever age category you date. But it's a place where they're busy, they're doing something, and you're basically distracting them away from whatever they're doing. They have a set amount of time, just like everyone does, and they're trying to get something done in that time, and you're taking away from that. But when you're sitting on a bot bus or a regular bus or a ferry or a water taxi, whatever it is, you're not doing anything else. You're just waiting to get to your destination. And a conversation is a nice break. It takes up the time that you'd normally just be sitting bored. And that's the other thing that happens too. The last time I was in Thailand, I was in a hotel that I was on the second floor and it had a balcony. And every morning I'd go out and smoke my cigar and have coffee. And as people walked by, I really couldn't tell because a lot of ladies had hats on, and I couldn't tell if they were Thai or they were tourists from another country or whatever. So I got in the habit of just saying good morning to everybody. And it was so different. It's like if someone was Thai, or there are a lot of people from Korea and other Asian countries that come there. But as a general rule, if somebody looked like they could be Thai, generally they would stop and look where I was because on the second floor, So they had to find me basically, and they would look, stop, look, and then when they saw me, it's like, oh, good morning, and they'd wave and walk on. And if somebody was from the West, either the UK or America or Australia, they would, most cases, just not pay attention. They would act like they didn't hear it and just continue to walk by, or they would stop for a second, look around, and then see me, and I would wave, and they would just kind of like frown their face and walk on. And it's like, no wonder dating. You guys can't even handle just being nice and general greetings for, good morning. It's like, how hard is that? Saying good morning and walking on. And so many women have that, oh, he's going to ask me out or he's going to bother me in some way. And you see that in the West where women go to the gym, they go everywhere with earplugs in, or not earplugs, but the earphones and listening to music or whatever. And a lot of women do that solely for the purpose of not having to communicate with people. And it's sad. I mean, we're going to lose our ability to have conversations if we don't start, enjoying when people want to talk. It's like I travel solo all the time. I never go with anyone usually. But I'm never alone. I'm always, wherever I go, if I go down to the pool, if I go to a local bar, if I go anywhere, I strike up conversations with people. Now, if you're going to meet someone organically and on the bot bus or wherever, you do have to kind of prepare yourself a little bit. Thai ladies typically, if you're in Pattaya, Bangkok, Phuket, even Chiang Mai, you're going to find that most people understand at least a little bit of English. Thai ladies, though, you have to remember, they're easily embarrassed and they don't want to look foolish. So a lot of ladies kind of downplay the English that they have. I've gone out with ladies that actually do very well. We talk, they understand everything I'm saying. They communicate very well, but they say, oh, my English is terrible. So if you're going to try to get dates that way, it's a good idea, or if you're going to go out on dates at all, it's a good idea to get a translation device. Google Translation is fine, but it really slows down the process because of reading. You can't really have a fluid conversation when you're constantly having to show the phone and have them read your response, and then they say something and you have to read the response. There are a lot more effective communication devices than that. Amazon has many of them in different styles. They work fairly well. You say something, it translates automatically from English or whatever your language is to Thai. They say something in Thai and it translates to your language. And it's a lot more natural talking that way because there's not such a delay of reading. So that helps. Okay. Like I said, though, you have to remember that even if a Thai lady is very fluent in English, they're not as talkative as women in the West. Okay. Women in the West, you can just sit there and be a good listener and they'll tell you all about themselves and all their exes and everything else. A Thai woman, it takes it takes having a conversation with them, asking them questions, but don't do the typical. A lot of guys fall into the habit. They go in and sit with a bar girl. How old are you? Where are you from? And it's just all the same questions over and over again. It's easy for a bar girl, and who cares? You're paying her, so she's going to be gracious. But when you're trying to impress a woman to date her, you need to ask her things that are kind of, you have children, how long have you been single? Questions that are more in line with dating someone. So that's the thing. Now, another way to do dating in Thailand is through the online or dating sites. When you do that, you have to remember one thing. A lot of people on the dating sites are there for other reasons other than dating. And it's just like dating sites in the West, to where you have scammers, you have girls that are trying to sell their content, you have all kinds of other things. The one thing I have found have tried Thai Friendly several times, and the one thing I have found is that the women tend to be more upfront. If you send a message to a woman and she's a freelancer, which is basically a bar girl or a working lady, she'll tell you looking for customers right away. She doesn't want you to waste your time. She doesn't want to waste her time. But you will find that, and just get ready for it. It happens. If you do online dating, you have to make it workable to where there's I have one of the videos about online dating to where you have to don't do messages to every woman that you talk to, because to make it work is kind of like in sales. You got to do group prospecting. You're sending out 10, 15 messages, and you may have one woman that responds positively. I will say they are more positive with online dating than they are in the West. Ladies will respond positively and show interest if they are in fact interested. And so that's one of the things, okay? One of the other things is with guys, men get so optimistic because they see, these old guys out with these young bar girls, and they say, hey, this is great. I can, put any age, and as long as they're over 18, I'm golden. No, okay? If you're going to date someone, make it realistic. I came up with an age gap calculation, kind of a ratio. For me, I'm 63, go to 64, divide in half, which is 32, and add 10 years. 42 is about, it's an ideal age for me, because the women are still younger to where they still are very attractive, and I think they're attractive, but it's not such an age gap that it's out of the realm of possibilities. When you walk down the street, or you meet a girl and you look like her grandfather, that's something that you're going to have to deal with. And I always say, in an age gap relationship, the bigger the gap, the more you have to fill that gap with money. And it's true. And the other thing is just the difference in people. If you're looking for a bar girl or a freelancer, and you want a girl that's 20 years old and you're 75, that's no big deal. Your time with her is going to be very short. So hopefully she doesn't kill you, and your time with her is short, so it doesn't matter. But if you're talking about dating, I didn't like 18, 20-year-old girls back when I was 18 to 20 years old and dating them. They're very into themselves. They're very into what they want. It's not a good time. Usually women take a while, especially if they're very attractive. It takes a while to kind of reality to settle in. And it's, to realize that there's a lot of beautiful women out there. And if you just rely on youth and your beauty, there's a lot of competition in that area. So you have to kind of develop being a nice person too. So that's, some of the things. If you're going to do online dating, though, be really careful, and be careful anywhere. This is, so many times people have such a bad opinion of dating in Thailand or the Philippines. And a lot of it just has to do with how stupid men can be when sex and love are involved. It's like, don't ever, 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 ever give money to a woman. And I'm not saying, for dinner, things like that, but don't give her money, buy her dinner. If she takes a cab and, she doesn't have a great job to be able to afford a taxi fare, that's great. You should pay for that taxi if you're inviting her somewhere. But go to the taxi and pay them. Don't give her money to pay. Because I hate to say it, in Thailand, there's a lot of fudging going on to where, if a girl takes a taxi and you say, well, how much was the taxi? There's always that, oh, I paid 3,000 baht for the taxi, when actually it was 150 baht or 100 baht. So always do that, but never. Women in Thailand and the Philippines are excellent at trying to make you feel guilty about their situation. You didn't create the situation. You don't owe, if the woman turns into your girlfriend or your wife, great. That's your life. But where you're talking about, I've had women in Thailand and the Philippines, I didn't even meet them the first time. First conversation on a dating site, and they're asking me to spend money. Well, my phone's about to die, and if my phone dies, I won't be able to talk to you. And they make it sound so convincing, and it just makes sense. It's like, well, that's true. You know, you're pretty, and I like you, and I don't want your phone to die. But it's all just a part of the whole process. You give in and you give money to a lady from Southeast Asia, you will never stop. Because once she knows she can get money out of you, it'll be her mother's sick buffalo, her mother's house needs a new roof, her mother's sick, her dad's sick, her kid needs medicine. Whatever it is, it'll never stop. So don't ever start it.